Hello, you're listening to the Neil Lampteyz Show. My name's Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
Good evening, mate.
And Neil.
Hello.
Another game that I think we probably quite confidently predicted victory in on Sunday. We should probably pack this in, shouldn't we?
Went wrong.
Yeah, it went wrong.
So wrong.
It went wrong. Strange game, although I probably always say that. I mean, we've been here. Give us credit, guys. We've been doing this for 3.5 years. There's only so many times I can say something new, and I'm not that imaginative. Let's do some moments of the week, yeah? Neil, you go first.
Weren't much this week, was there?
It's been a slog.
That tackle, I think I'll just go with that. It's not like a good thing or anything. Just the hoopla around that bad tackle, which should have been a sending off. And it just winds me up when, in so many certain occasions, that's a sending off. And then the one time where you'd expect it to be a sending off because it's so obvious, it's not. And it's just annoying. I
think very, very good point. One that we will no doubt touch on in more detail as we get into the meat of the Sheffield United game. Paul, what's yours?
My moment of the week is fuck it. This afternoon I went to see my daughter at a nursery Christmas show, and she sang "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" in French.
Oh,
in French.
In French, and that was pretty awesome.
Bright girl.
Yeah.
Nice work. I'm bringing it back to Cov a little bit, but again, I'm really, really struggling. Not that wasn't delightful. I would say a sort of composite mixture of Ruben Lemares' performance, which I thought was good. I was nice to see him back in the side. Jim O'Brien's continuing excellent performances, I think, although some people might disagree with me, but we'll see. And I guess the one that puts the cherry on top, even though it hasn't actually happened, is Tony Mowbray today talking about possibly trying to keep Ben Turner to the end of the season. Although with a reasoning more laboured than that which he's been trying to convince McLaren that Armstrong is better not to go back. He actually backed himself into a corner by the looks of it at one point where he was saying, they've led 2-0 in games recently, but admittedly they've thrown those goals away. But they've got to ask themselves whether he's really going to want to go back there and sit in the under-21s. And you're like, what, in a defence that's leaking goals? He'd probably just be back in the team, Tony. But keep fighting the good fight.
Yeah, he's trying.
Yeah,
give him
and God bless that man for doing so. Ben Turner, for all of his might and power, unable to keep a clean sheet on Sunday. And I think he is the sort of player that could single-handedly keep a clean sheet. But maybe not entirely his fault for the defeat. Paul, do you care to elaborate on what happened on Sunday?
Interesting you've gone about Lemares, and I think he is obviously the key player. And as Neil alluded to, in the 22nd minute, Jay McEverly just went straight through him and probably should have been sent off, if there's any probably in that sentence. It was a red card. I think we've all seen it, and we've all seen those tackles, and we've seen tackles a lot worse, a lot less worse get red cards. And me and you had a quick discussion before we started, and you went, "Well, did you think it was a red?" And for me, it's just McEverly's not only out of control. I don't even understand in what situation he's not going to go straight through Lemares. I know Lemares' touch is really good touch, but even if he's just stood there, he's going to go straight through him. It's just crazy. The linesman is 5 yards away.
I think it's the opposite of crazy. I think the reason it ultimately is a red card is because of how premeditated it was. It's not a coincidence. But I mean, Lemares had mugged him off for about a 5-minute period running up to that, exactly. And they just wanted to smash him up, didn't they?
My statement on crazy was how it's not a red card.
Oh, I see. Sorry, no, I do apologise. I thought you meant the intention from the defender.
No, so, I mean, that should have been a straight red. But, okay, he's booked him. Not agreeing with that decision. And then a bit later on, Dean Hammond had just kicked him for no reason. And you're like, oh, okay, Sheffield United are really struggling to deal with Lemares. But do you know who the one guy who did stop Lemares was? Any ideas?
Tony Mowbray?
Tony Mowbray when he bought him off.
Well done.
And you're like, really? And it's just... the referee made a couple of really bad errors. There was obviously the red card. There was the handball. The one did it or didn't it cross the line. I always find those ones are really tricky. I think that's just the referee. I think has to be 100% sure if he's going to give a goal, because if it's not 100% cross the line, if he gives a goal, then it's going to be all hell's going to break loose. The handball,
My
he should
problem with
have
that one
spotted.
was just like it kind of looked like, to me when I first saw it. I know I'm a Cov fan, so it looks, but it kind of looked like he'd fucked up and he'd gone in, and then he pulled it back. And I couldn't believe they didn't, even if there was like an optical illusion there or something, they didn't think it had gone in. It looked in.
Yeah, it did look in, and not only that, but well, on the flip side of that, I guess, because I agree with you. Instinctively, I looked at it and thought it's in. But how many times did you watch a replay of it and it still prove inconclusive? I can understand why it must have been. I can understand that was a difficult call, but I agree.
The replay's made it worse.
I thought so.
You thought, I watched it, I was like, that's in, and that's kind of the reaction you'd expect, like a ref or a linesman to look at and think, okay, it must be in. It looked in, but.
And Sky were desperate for some finality to the point where they were like, well, that's the one that proves it. And you were like, well, proof there is subjective.
The problem is, I can't even remember where the referee was stood. The linesman's in an almost impossible position because his whole view of that ball is being blocked by the goalkeeper's body. So it's going to be a take of very brave linesman. And as we saw, one who's 5 yards away from a blatant sending off didn't result in a sending off. So I don't think you can expect a linesman to make that decision. And as I said, the more blatant one was just the handball. It's just he's put his arm out.
Yeah, that was daft to have not seen that.
And there were other sort of, is it Bayliss, their right back, who committed about 18 fouls and get booked, and then Dean Hammond committed about 5 yellow. I always thought if you pull someone back, it's a yellow card.
It depends what team you're on, apparently.
Yeah, Murphy just was permanently getting pulled back, and it's like, no, that's got to be a yellow card. Oh, okay. But the next time, okay. And so the referee didn't help. But whatever you do in those circumstances, don't give the opposition a goal. Just don't do anything completely stupid. Sheffield United are a poor side. They look like a poor side. And then, I know we've discussed this after the Doncaster game. It's like, for me, Reece Charles-Cook hasn't been playing particularly well for a while. And that's fair enough. Young player, young goalkeeper. And I thought a while ago he's looking a bit dodgy at crosses. And fair enough, these things you only get noticed when it results in the goal. And anyone can watch the goals on YouTube, or you watch them on the Channel 5 league show. And a mate of mine called him our double-barreled dodgy goalkeeper. And another one.
That's catchy.
Yeah.
No wonder you mentioned that.
And the other one was my mate who's a Middlesbrough fan, who was going, Tony Mowbray's great signing, Dimi Konstantopoulos, who's kept like 38 clean sheets and 68 appearances. And it's like, how brilliant is Dimi? And it's like, yeah. And he goes, how's your dodgy goalkeeper coming along? And you're like, okay, it's probably a bit harsh. But if you're just seeing the goals on TV, you're probably watching goals which you're thinking a goalkeeper should be doing better with those. And he was nowhere near it again. And it's just, I know we discussed after the Doncaster game, it was like a case of, it's just one of those days. And I saw people say that after the show. The problem is, it's like, I don't want us to be giving away. We should have picked up 4 points in the last 2 games. We picked up 1. And I know we're still second, but it's a case of like, we can't keep doing this. And I didn't think, I think we deserved to win. As I said earlier, I think it was definitely a handball. It would appear that it crossed the line, so that's a goal. But we didn't really create that many other chances than that. And then I thought Mowbray's decision, like subs, were just ludicrous, just like madness.
Yeah.
When you take off Winslow and you got Fortuna, you got like, I look at our squad, it's like, I'd rather have Lampteyz. Oh, you've taken him off. Okay. Jim O'Brien. Okay, you've taken him off. Kent, where you moved him to? And it's like, you've got all these wingers and you're playing Fortuna on the right wing. And it's like, that's never going to work. But then you've put Joe Cole on, and we discussed this at the time. I really want Joe Cole to be a success. I'd love him to be a success. My problem now is he going to be a Rodney Marsh, a Tino Asprilla, where it's a case of we bought him in because we could get him, but is he almost a distraction for us? Because you watch that game against Sheffield United and you think, we don't need Joe Cole in this. We don't need Joe Cole to come on. What we've got here is 4 attacking players with movement and sort of dynamism. You brought on Joe Cole and he didn't really do anything. And it's a case of, like, I understand you've got to get him up to match fitness, but maybe not in a game which is this close. And I do worry that sort of Joe Cole is just something we don't need. It's something which is going to cause more problems than it's solving. And maybe, 6 months' time after he's got match fit and he's played brilliantly, you'll be able to place him and go, I told you. But it is a case of, are we just trying to shoe him into the side because he's Joe Cole? And that just didn't, against Sheffield United, it just didn't work. It just never looked like it was going to work. And yeah, okay, we played well enough to we probably should have won. So it's all a bit, but it is a case of, we didn't win. It's always one of those, isn't it? I don't think we had enough chances. We scored, but the goal wasn't given. But other than that, we didn't have enough. We didn't force their goalkeeper into enough saves, did we? We didn't actually. Even when I thought we were on top in the game, I never really felt like Sheffield United were really stretched. Like, even that moment was just a brilliant bit of skill by Jacob Murphy to go to the byline, which is something that, good players can produce. But I think Sheffield United were probably quite content with the way that they were dealing with us up to that point. But even then, it's just like, whatever you do, just come out of it with a 0-0. And then when Ricketts got sent off at the end, you're like, that's an awful decision by the referee. But the referee's been making awful decisions all game. As soon as you make that 50-50 challenge and lose, he's going to send you off. And it just, like, for me, it symbolised the whole performance of the team. It was just, they didn't quite adapt to the way that Sheffield United were quite happy to kick them. And instead of using that to their own advantage, I thought they allowed Sheffield United to sort of get in their heads.
Neil, Ricketts' red card, I saw it and thought, I thought whilst it was a poor decision, I think in the heat of a game and a player on a yellow card in what was quite a niggly game, I could have almost forgave it had it have not been for how much had been let go the other way, or even just in the game. I'm not even trying to say that he let them, or that he was biased or anything. What did you make of Ricketts' red card?
I agree, really. I mean, the frustration there is, well, it's twofold almost. I don't think he was flying into a few tackles, which I guess he was doing because he felt that the game was such where everybody was doing the same thing and they were getting away with it. And that's the second part of it. It's just that because everybody was getting away with it, it just winds you up that our captain, for something where actually they were both doing exactly the same thing and it's just that split second where someone gets there first, is now, he's out for a game and he's sent off. When I don't know who was it who should have been sent off for about 10 different fouls?
Dean Hammond.
Hammond, yeah. I mean, that was just ridiculous. So they were blatant. That was just him trying his luck every single time. And that was just, I mean, we always hate to have a go at referees' performances, but you don't want them to have that much of an impact. And I just felt like he was desperate to be one of those referees who's in control of the game but letting things go. So at the end of it, he had full control. The fact of the matter is he didn't have control. He had absolutely no control of it because he was just making completely arbitrary decisions all the way throughout. There was no pattern behind it, except the only pattern was most of them were wrong and shit. So, referee, bad. Us, not much better.
What were what in your mind were the main factors that contributed to our defeat? Because I think the overwhelming swell of popularity on Twitter were the referee and the sort of injustice nature of it. Do you think that was the main one? Do you think we had an element to play in it? Do you think that Sheffield United were particularly good? Well, how did that balance out?
I think it was sort of cumulative over the course of the match. Things influence your decision making. We weren't being quite as threatening as we used to. We're used to playing games where we have an endless stream of chances. We create them, and whether we score them or not, that's different. At least we know we're going to create chances. Throughout that game, it became they were deeper than most teams against us, so it was harder for us to break through them. I think once we made the mistake, and it was a completely unwarranted mistake. It shouldn't have happened. We let them score a goal. Everything by that point seemed to be going against us, and I always feel like that's there's a negativity about that. I mean, how far was that? That was like the 10 minutes to go, wasn't it? So this season we've had opportunities, to pull things back, and we've done that quite a lot. I just felt like as soon as they scored, Moby made his final change. I can't remember what change it was. He brought Fortuny on, didn't he? Or something crazy.
Who had already gone off at that point? I can't remember. He brought Fortuny on.
It was. I mean, you look at that.
For Vincelo, I think.
That was it, and it was sort of that sort of insanity football manager sort of thing where more strikers, go everybody up front, and it was just like, okay, this is purely because we're trying anything now, and I don't know.
Do you know what I thought?
It was always the opposite. Sorry, just to cut you off
no,
there,
Karen, no.
It's almost the opposite of the other game where people were criticising him for not making changes, and he didn't make changes because the team that was on the pitch seemed to be doing a good job. And in all honesty, I probably would have kept the team that was on the pitch that was playing. I would let them see it out because I felt like they weren't playing poorly enough to warrant being taken off. But I guess the only thing is you're trying to change the game. You're trying to pull something out the hat. And he gave it a go, and quite frankly, nothing worked. But what are you going to do, eh?
Sorry, Joey. I understand that. I can understand the springing on of Kent, but this is goes back to I just like us to have a slight different plan B, and just if we'd have had a different type of option, is how I felt over the last two games. Is I don't look at the bench and think, oh, we've got someone who we could then try and play a different style of game into. And I just felt Sheffield United, they say we're really deep. They realised that our main strength is pace. And they just made sure that we didn't have the gaps to play into. So then you've got to have a look at a different way of doing it. And to some extent, our squad has quite a lot of similar players in. It's just, you sort of sometimes want even if it's a tall man, just to sort of create a little bit of different havoc. And it was interesting that he brought Fortuna on and then shoved him out on the right wing. It was almost like, I need to bring him on because he's a striker. And then you thought, well, Kent's your best winger. Why has he now been moved into a really foreign role for him, where he just then disappeared out of the game?
I thought it was just the problem with the substitutions for me was I thought, and I've tried to skirt around this, but I think as time goes on, I'm more committed to it. I felt like in Lampteyz and O'Brien, and to a lesser extent Vincelo, he took off the best players on the pitch and replaced them in Fortuna and Kent largely with two of my least favourite players at the club, and the two players that I think are two of the least effective. And I was
Kent.
I just thought it was bewildering. I just thought it was. And when I say, I don't mean that I think that they're rubbish necessarily, although in Fortuna's case, I actually increasingly think that is the case. But that I think if you look through our plethora of attacking midfielders, I would put Kent as the least individually effective. I think as a unit, he scares teams, but that I think that Lampteyz is a much better player and arguably a much better option. I'm not sure that Kent is anything more effectively than a scare tactic. But that, as Paul says, in a game that Sheffield United had decided they were just going to close out the space in, I'm not sure his inclusion was any more effective than what Jacob Murphy was already trying to do. I think that Fortuna, in theory, coming on is a good idea. I just don't think he's any good. I don't know what's going on there. And I don't know whether that's just me but I think Paul's right to an extent, although I don't agree with him about the lack of variety on the bench, because I think we've got a tremendous wealth of attacking options and in a reasonable sort of variation. But I think that when it comes to sort of physicality and sort of battering rams, that's where we've got options, but they are our weakest.
Sorry, my final point before you carry on, Neil, is if I was Marcus Tudgay, I'd ask to leave in January, because
I would agree with that.
It's like he's so far behind Fortuna. For what I can see, no justifiable reason whatsoever. But Tudgay is, Fortuna would have to be knocked over by a bus before Tudgay gets on the pitch. And it's just, I don't see how Fortuna's got this either starts away from home or his first dibs when we need us, or first out of the two of them, it is a case of like, look at these two bold men who need to come least. And I don't understand. I know this is coming from me, who isn't Tug Guy's biggest fan, but I think Tug Guy doesn't deserve to be in the pecking order, clearly behind Fortuna. I think that's down to Mowbray having managed Fortuna somewhere else and actually thinks that he's still that player he was when he was in his 20s.
Neil, you were going to say?
Yeah, it was just to agree on the Fortuna thing. Absolutely, yeah. I don't think he's shown anything of note when he's come on, especially. I don't think I can give you the Kent thing. I think I think there's definitely validity in what he offers, and in previous games, I think you're right. It is a scare tactic, but I think there's value in that scare tactic. So it made sense to. I felt like it made sense to give him a go. Like you say, probably left wing wasn't the best option for him, but there's certainly something there with Kent. It's just, I think that the Tug Guy one is interesting because I've never been much of a fan of him, and even when he's come on this season, I've not seen as much as everybody else has seen on him, but I've certainly seen more than Fortuna, which is, that feels like there's an element of favouritism or something going on where someone's playing much better on the training ground than they actually are on the pitch, because you just wouldn't waste a sub on Fortuna at the moment. It's such a shot in the dark whether he's going to do anything or not.
So you're absolutely right, and I guess I should be clearer about the point on Kent. I felt like O'Brien for a start. If we start with O'Brien, who I thought for large periods of the game was the best player on the pitch, has increasingly over the last 10 games become even more of a talisman for us in my mind than he has been previously. And I think the pinnacle of it was in the Gillingham game, where he sets the tempo and leads from the front to such an extent that all of that sort of hot-blooded football, I think, comes from him. And I think that he's such a useful player to have, because I think he's intelligent enough to know what positions to take up, and he's energetic enough to cause people problems in and out of possession, that taking him off was ludicrous, because I think it made our spirits drop effectively.
Yeah.
But I also think that he has, from a position last season where I didn't really see it, become one of the most effective on-the-floor passers, I would say, in this league. I think his vision and ability to thread a ball has been exceptional. On that, I would also say that Lampteyz had played maybe 2 balls that were of astonishing quality during that game, and hit a volley that, technique-wise, was was the equal of anything you're likely to see in League One. And fuck that keeper for saving it, because that was a real wonder strike, and it was a shame that didn't become anything more than a sort of forgotten footnote of that game. And I agree with you about Ryan Kent. I think that even as much as I complain about his lack of what I consider to be damaging end product, I do think that in a team where he starts, he can cause people an awful lot of problems, because teams have to set up differently when he's there. But in a game where I felt that they'd compacted so heavily, it more to me felt like you'd be looking for lock pickers of the ilk of O'Brien, Lampteyz, and potentially have your runners, i.e. Murphy, Armstrong, and possibly one battering ram in there, sort of in that space that they would hopefully pick up on that. And I didn't quite see where Kent was a better option than the players that came off, especially given how well I thought that both of them, admittedly sometimes in spells, had played. However, the Fortuna argument is far less sophisticated. I just don't think it's very good.
What do you two make of Joe Cole? Because I really wanted it to be a success, but he did nothing when he came on against Sheffield United. The last game he played, okay, it's one of those misnomers. The free kick was awesome. The rest of his performance, if it hadn't have been Joe Cole, would have been sort of that stank. And he's clearly trying to get some sort of fitness, and obviously they're trying to bring him in full time in January to free up the space for loans and stuff. It's just,
Neil, I think I get your point. Neil, your Joe Cole thoughts?
I can't be quite as damning on him, I think there's two periods of Joe Cole. There's the bit beforehand where he was so unfit, he was doing bits and bobs, and he clearly wasn't ready for football. I guess I'll go back to my point before, where I felt like the majority of the team sort of fell away in the last game. So I'm loath to pin too much of the performance or his lack of it. I don't want to be too sort of definitive just yet. I don't know. He's fit now. He came on. He didn't get into the game. It's happened. It's potentially just something that's happened. And I just we'll see more of him over Christmas. I'm sure we'll give him more time. And now that he's fit, there's no excuse over the next few games for him to start having an impact. If he's fit and he's playing these games and he goes 4 or 5 matches without having an impact, then we're kind of at a bit of a crossroads with him, because we just can't afford him as a luxury or whatever he is. If he's not going to make an impact, then we've got people like Big Romano not being able to play because of it. And by all accounts, he's having a stunning impact in training. He's doing really well. He's just so unlucky not to get in the team.
I was moved pre-pod to send a message to friend of the show, Kieran Crowley. Hello, Kieran, if you're listening. To ask about Joe Cole, because I'm usually not very quick to judge on a player unless they're someone like, who have I can never remember who I really hate. Never mind. Anyway, that's a non-sequitur.
Ryan Kent.
Well, no. Well, yeah. No. Because I kind of agree with you. I think that his performances, such as they are, sort of 40, 50-minute or 30-minute cameos here and there, have been somewhat underwhelming. And I was just interested to see how he'd looked in training. And Kieran assures me that he has looked the absolute real deal. And I think I'm still happy to just give him a bit of time. I think that, I think we probably have this, what I think of Prosineckiism in our heads, of a player of that age just still being a dream machine on the pitch, irrespective of the loss of legs or pace or whatever. And I'm not convinced that Joe Cole converts in that way, but I still do think he's probably got something to do. I just think we've got to work out to what extent that is. I think, to Neil's point, the problem would be if it comes at the expense of players of proven great quality, and most specifically, it's if we end up trying to accommodate Maddison around him, who I think, if he's now pretty much good to go, I think should be the fulcrum of the team again. I think that's where I think he comes in at number 10, and as brilliant as I think Jacob Murphy's been at number 10, and as brilliant as Joe Cole could be, and as great as I think Jim O'Brien is, it has to be Maddison in there. Just has to be for me.
Absolutely.
The only other comment, one thing worries me is when people go, Joe Cole could play a bit deeper.
No, he couldn't.
Yeah, that's those sort of sentences sort of worry me, really, because it's just then you are just trying to shoehorn him into the side because of his name. Not it's there are 34-year-olds who can perform at League One level and do a very good job of it. I'd be very surprised if Joe Cole's one of them. But, I know. So I'm not sort of trying. I'm not trying to slag off Joe Cole. I do hope he's a success. I just thought him coming on at Sheffield United was I just disagree with that completely. As soon as it happened, it just seemed like an odd decision in a game where Sheffield United were obviously not afraid to just kick people. And when you're coming back, whoever it had been, I don't think those are the sort of games you throw someone in who's not 100% fit and ready to go. Because it's just
it was on a knife edge for a long time, wasn't it?
And Sheffield United, they going back to the Neil Warnock days, they've always been a nasty side. I mean, they've always been the sort of side who I'll kick you until I get booked, and then I won't kick you. It'll be someone else's turn until they get booked. I mean, obviously, a couple of the players ignored that and just kept kicking us, and they didn't even get a second booking. But they're not, they're not a pretty side to be. And I say this as honestly as I can, being a Cole fan who's watched us play shit over the years. I've seen us be shit, but I've never been embarrassed by the style of football we tried to play. If that was the style of football that we were renowned for, of just being a bunch of teams who, and let's face it, it's not, Sheffield United weren't unusual on Sunday. They've had people like Chris Morgan in the past, who have just been cloggers. Paddy Kenny, who's just one of the biggest cheating bastards going.
Michael Doyle.
Yeah. Well, they've always had like 4 or 5 just horrible players. I don't think I'd enjoy that, and just watching them just go around, just like that kick from Hammond on the back of Lampteyz when Lampteyz was just gone, and he wasn't even trying to kick the ball. For me, that's as bad as the one earlier, which should have been a red card. It's just fucking petty. It's like, I'm not good enough, so I'm just going to kick you. It's like, well, that's not what football's about. It's
There was one moment where Jacob Murphy nearly had his shirt wrestled entirely off his body.
Oh yeah.
You just think, well, like you say, I used to love it when, and I know this is fucking prehistoric football or whatever, but and this is actually quite a modern reference, but when Danny Fox used to like unequivocally dump a winger out within the first 5 minutes, I think that's good fun. That's fine. It's not, he was never going to break a leg doing it, but he just made sure that they knew he was there. That's fun. Just watching someone pull a shirt really hard or like trip someone, you just think, oh, fuck off. Come on.
He's better than you. That's all it is.
Yeah. And there's part of you that's like, oh yeah, and we've talked about it before, on the halfway line, if it's going to be a breakaway or whatever, then, but Sheffield United just over and over again. And to your point, I think you're absolutely right. If that was the team that you supported and you were watching them week in, week out, you'd be like, oh, come on, guys. They're good as well. That's the thing. I thought, what's his lad, Brayford was a good player and...
Shit haircut, though.
Oh, I mean, that is an absolute mess,
God.
isn't it?
God, what's he doing? It's so poor.
It's like watching someone from the medieval era. It's like, you look like a dickhead.
Yeah.
Sorry, you just look like a dickhead.
It was a real tragedy, weren't it? Yeah.
Listen to us being all critical. We haven't been like this for a while, have we?
Yeah, but we look so great. I guess that's what puts us in the...
Yeah, well, we put ourselves out there now. So, yeah.
But I think the thing that it goes back to what we discussed on the last pod, where rightly or wrongly, Joey dismissed it as one of those days, and it irritated me because I always think if you're in a strong position, you've got to compound it. You've got to look. We're top of the table. We've beaten the best. We're top of the table. Let's go on from there. We haven't achieved anything yet, but we are in the position where it's easier for us to achieve it than anyone else. And then we made all the changes against Bradford. It was a bit of a damp squib, but a 0-0 draw at Bradford was a good result. But it was a good result if we beat Doncaster. And it's like, well, we should have beaten Doncaster. We beat them twice, but we let them back into it twice. But that's an all right draw if we go to Sheffield United and win. And it's like, well, we went to Sheffield United and we failed to score a legitimate goal that was given. And we lost 1-0 in another, I think we have to discuss this. Reece Charles Cook, it's...
Do we have to discuss it tonight?
Well, I just, like... I had no idea. This is strange coming from me. I have no idea if I like him or dislike him. I get irritated by the fact he's looked on so favourably compared to Burge. I just don't see him being this brilliant keeper with Burge being this terrible one. Not that I see Burge being a brilliant keeper and Reece Charles Cook being a terrible one. It's not. So I'm not even like, Burge should be in the team because he's far better. I honestly don't know who is better. What I do know is Reece Charles Cook's cost us points in the last 2 games. And the flap for the cross was coming, and it's... I know we discussed this in the past. If he's that sort of keeper, then he's got to keep coming for it. But I almost then think, well, teams have worked. Sheffield United obviously had a plan because all their set pieces he came for and I think he got near one of them. And it's almost like, well, you just swing it away from him because you know he's going to come, but you just make sure you just put it out of his reach so he's in no man's land. So either he's got to be coached into doing something different, or we replace him with Burge. I don't know. It's not good enough.
Nothing terminal yet, though. Just let's start winning again.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about our next opportunity to do that after this break. Yeah, we've got Oldham on Saturday, haven't we? I referenced it when you started talking about Reece Charles Cook. We're very tired, and I'll put this out there now. Not a comprehensive preview. Never is, I guess, but this one may be less than usual.
The weekly caveat, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we should. It should be by exception when it's actually been done properly. Yeah, Oldham, 23rd in the league. They have a game in hand, which are over their rivals, which could possibly see them rise as high as 17th. But as we know, teams in 23rd don't often win their game in hand. And for once, we don't have to be worrying about teams in the relegation zone winning their games in hand because we're in second. Albeit we have to worry about Walsall winning their game in hand because they're on the same points as us. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and they. But fortunately, they've recently they hired Sean O'Driscoll yet?
I don't know.
Strongly rumoured, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly looks like that is going to be the case. Who was really good at Doncaster a few years ago before popping up at Liverpool as an assistant manager and then getting fired as part of the Rodgers clear-out in the summer, I think.
I think you also missed a disastrous spell at Bristol City in the league.
Bristol City, I think. Was he at Forest for a bit?
He was, yeah. The idea of him is so much better than the implementation. He's just disaster after disaster the last few years.
I think he's another one of them Boothroyd type managers where has had notable success of some description a while ago and is still just on his... that's certainly what I'm hoping for, at least. Anyway, I digress significantly. Eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that their top scorer has a Coventry connection. Danny Philliskirk has 6 for them this season, who I gather is become something of a League One hot property.
Apparently he wasn't that bad.
Yeah, apparently he's become an alright player for Oldham in the sort of tail end last season and this season. Their second top scorer is Michael Higdon, who you may well know from his spell at Sheffield United last season. He's on loan from Sheffield United this season. Interestingly, I think he only scored about 3 goals for Sheffield United last season in about 25 appearances. But do you remember Higdon? Because there was some talk about, I think mainly just from fans.
Vaguely, yes.
When he joined Sheffield United, about him being a hot choice for us. He scored loads of goals in Holland after he moved from Motherwell there. And he'd scored loads of goals at Motherwell. And it's curious, he's got 5 goals in 10 appearances for Oldham since joining them on loan, which is pretty good for a team in 23rd, I guess you'd admit. And interesting that it didn't work out for him at Sheffield United. I'd be more interested to know about that. But I would mark him out as a genuine danger man on Saturday. They've got a wide player called Dominic Pollian, who I think is fast, but I think that's probably just from Football Manager. I'm not too sure whether I've actually...
That's how they do it.
I think that's probably all I've got on that one. I think that's probably all you need to know. A little bit of form information. As you can imagine, for a team who are in 23rd, it's not great. Their last 6 games, they have won 1, drawn 1. Curiously, though, their away form is actually pretty good. They have won 2 and drawn 3 of their last 6 away games. So let's do some predictions and then let's all go to bed. Paul, what do you reckon?
I don't know.
Neil, what do you reckon?
I don't know. It depends if he changes his front 4 for the umpteenth time, or whether or not Madison's fit.
How can you say for the umpteenth time? He hasn't. That's been the same. That's been the most fixed front 4 we've had in a long time. Surely that was only on Saturday. On Sunday it was changed, wasn't it?
You mean apart from the game before, where he changed it from the game before that? When he changed it from the game before that?
Maybe. I don't know.
He rotates. Mate, he rotates the front 4 almost on a weekly basis, if not on a weekly basis.
Isn't dependent on whether they're home or away. Isn't it at home they are?
No, even fixed. The last 2 home games, I think he started different front 4s. I could be wrong, but I think he has.
Carry on.
I'll go 1-0.
2.
Actually, no, I'll go 2-1. I can't see who's keeping a clean sheet.
Yeah.
So 2-1 to Cough.
Neil?
I'm thinking the same. I think a win is on the cards. We need it. 3 games without one it's not good enough now. So 2-1 to us. I'm
gonna go for 1-1. I think. I can't tell you why.
4 games without a win.
Yeah.
Oh.
That security blanket.
Olden days, that is, isn't it?
Do you remember when?
Yeah. Nah.
So we're only 6 points into the playoffs now. We were. I didn't realise, but sorry, I know, but I didn't.
No, it's great. Our standards are so high now. I love it.
But I didn't realise Burton were now 5 points clear of us.
Yeah,
It's
they
just
are, yeah.
this is just what annoys me. We were, I know we're still second, but just this, from what we understand, having spoken to people and you hear stories, this is it, isn't it? This is this one team's chance of getting promotion. This time next season, we probably won't have people of the quality of Murphy and Fleck and Armstrong, and you're just like, we're 5 points behind Burton. It's not even like, if you're like 5 points behind Wigan or Sheffield United, you'd be like, ugh.
Yeah, indeed. I think that feels like a good moment to end that. So if you want to get in touch with us, the email address is neellampteyshow@gmail.com, or it's at neellampteyshow on Twitter. Paul, thanks.
Cheers, mate.
Neil, thanks.
Cheers, boys.
Thanks you, listener. Bye.